Welcome back. In one of the previous steps, we looked at JPQL. We looked at how to write queries using JPQL, and we converted them to named queries in the last step. Let's shift our attention to something called native queries. Some of the times you have to use native queries to fire queries to the database. We'll look at those situations and also how you can fire native queries. So I'll copy the JPQL test and I'll call this native queries test. Native queries test. So native queries is nothing but sending a direct SQL out from your JPA. So instead of JPQL, where we talk about entities, when we are talking about JPQL, we are writing queries using entities. So the kind of queries that we would use in JPQL would be looking like select C from course C. However, this same query, when I execute as a native query, it would look something like select star from course. Right. So what we want to do now is we would want to be able to execute a query of this kind, select star from course. How do we do that? For that, we would need to use the native queries. What I'll do is I'll remove all the other stuff which is present in here. So all this is not really needed. So JPQL basic, actually now it's no longer native queries basic. That's basically what we are doing in here. So here entity manager has a create native query method. So I can create a native query passing in the query that I would want to execute. So the query which I want to execute is select star from course. That's it. So here I would change this as well to select star from course and right click, run as JUnit test. So now you can see that the JUnit has succeeded, and also you can see that select star from course is being fired in here. So that's cool, and let's see what results are being printed in here. Over here you can see that all the courses are being printed properly. However, one of the things that you can see is here java.lang.object is being printed because it does not know which entity to map the result set to. You can tell the entity to map to by using the entity as the second parameter. So I can say course.class, and I'm saying that the results would be of the type course.class. So now if you execute the query, you'd see that the JUnit exits fine, as well as when I look at the log. So this is what is the output that is being printed. That's good. So this is a very basic native query, right? So there are advanced native queries that you can fire as well. So you can say create native query, and I can define parameters as well. So I can say where ID is equal to question mark, and I can say query dot set parameter, and I can say the position. So the position here starts with 1. So I can say position 1, the value I would want to set is 1001L. And I can get the result set and print it as well. So this is native queries with parameter. So I'm trying to get a specific course in here. What would be the output? So this is select where ID is equal to question mark. So I'm getting a specific course back. You can see that there is only one course that is being printed. That's JPA in 50 steps updated. That's the one which has the ID of 10,001. That's the course that's being printed in here. Now, I can also use named parameters. So instead of doing something of this kind with, I can say named parameters. What is a named parameter? So instead of saying question mark, instead of using position, I can use named parameter. So I'm saying colon ID, I'm giving it a name, and here I can say set parameter ID as 10,000L. So instead of using positional parameters 1, 2, 3, I'm using named parameters. So ID as 10,001. Now you would see there's not really any change in the result because it's the exact query which we are firing in, except with a different approach. So here ID is equal to colon ID. In this step, what we are doing is actually looking at a few things related to native queries. These are actually all the scenarios where we are looking at right now are actually those things where it's better to use the JPQL. But are there situations where you have to go for native queries? Yes, there are definitely situations where you have to go to native queries. Sometimes you have to set some tuning parameters, or you want to use some database specific feature. So if you're connecting to a database and it has a feature which is not supported by JPA, in those kind of situations, you have no other option other than trying to fire a native queries. And the other situation where you would have to go for a native query is when you have to do a mass update. Let's say I would want to update all the rows in a specific table in a query. In those kind of situations, if you do it through JPA, then you need to get the row and then update. Get the row, then update. You cannot do a mass update using JPA. So in those kind of situations, we would use native queries. So the way we would do that, let's say I would want to update the updated timestamp on all this stuff. Native queries to update. So I would want to update all rows in the course table. So I would want to say update course set. I would want to set the updated date, last updated date of all the columns. Let's say I would want to set it to sysdate. When you're using an update, then the way we would do that is by using a query dot execute update, and this would return an integer back. This would return int number of rows updated, rows updated, and now I can log in number of rows updated. I can log the number of rows updated. Now let's see what would happen. So doing this kind of stuff through JPA is not very efficient, because if you want to update this kind of stuff through JPA, you need to get the each row and then update row by row. There's no way to do a mass update through JPA. You can see that I'm getting a transaction required here because we are trying to change the data. You need a transaction, and for this test I'll make it transactional. So transactional. Ideally, until now in all our unit tests which were making changes to the database, we were calling a repository method, and the transactional is defined on the repository method, so there was no problem. This is the first time we are directly calling an update from the JNet itself. So we needed to add a add transactional to make sure that this is within the boundaries of a transaction. And you can see that I'm saying update course, last updated date is equal to sysdate. And you can see that all the 4 rows which are present in the database are updated due to this. In this step, what we looked at is different kinds of native queries. We looked at how to set parameters to native queries. Also, we looked at how to execute an update using a native query. One of the things you need to make sure is whenever you're using a native query, you're not making use of persistence context. So if you have all these entities directly present in your persistence context, then you need to make sure that you would refresh them so that you get the latest stuff from the database. Until the next step, bye-bye.